Hi Raymond, how are you?
Good, thank you, Brian. How are you?
I am well, thank you. So I'm intrigued by your gratitude walk movement. Can you tell me a little bit about it? What inspired you? What was its intention?
So the gratitude walk, as much as I believe I created a movement, actually exists. We coined it the gratitude walk when we started doing this a week ago. But actually, when I came back and Googled, people are actually talking about creating gratitude walks. But a week ago, we started walking. My friend and I, Mary, started walking, and we noticed right on the onset when we started walking, it's so much easier for us to talk about negative things, right? Negative politics things, negative this person things. It's just easier. The brain sort of wants to talk about problems that are in the world. And very quickly after round 2 or 3, we noticed that it sort of was that energy of negativity was sort of gaining momentum. And now the next story, yeah, and this is happening and that's happening. And midway through, I remember feeling this is not a good starting point for us. And I was very uncomfortable that this healthy thing was coupled with an unhealthy thing. And so the next day I said to Mary, let's start with just listing out 3 things that we are grateful for. And my intention was, if we list out 3 things that we're grateful for, at least it starts in a good momentum and see where this goes. But what happened was we were not just listing, we were telling stories related to the things that we were grateful for. Like, so, I'm really grateful that my mother today did this. And then we were telling an extended story about that. So we would have a couple of rounds, and one grateful story is completed. And the next thing we know, we're walking 21 rounds, and we are, it's just stories of gratefulness. And we were very conscious, along the way, we got very conscious about the fact that we could actually feel when a negative story was coming in. We could course correct because we were so conscious of what was good about the feeling of expressing gratitude. And also, some days we just did not have many phenomenal gratitudes to have. And so some days we just stopped, kept quiet long enough, and said, we're thankful for the birds, we're thankful for the rain, we're thankful for the petals of yellow flowers on the ground. And so sometimes we had many stories, and sometimes we had to pause long enough to just be thankful for the small things. Now, 2 weeks in, it is completely become our ritual. As soon as we walk on the tarmac, this is a conversation of 21 rounds of us just being grateful. And
Uh,
it's changed the momentum of the rest of our day just because we start in that tone.
so amazing. Sometimes I think about gratitude as a mood stabilizer, right? It helps change our mood and so just to piggyback on what you're saying, right, about how you've created a new ritual, but I believe, I'm sure it also can break rituals, right, and change belief systems. So what rituals does it break?
So for me, as early as 3 weeks ago, I felt I was spiraling into what I can only describe as a mild depression, right? So I knew that there was something that was needed to change. I didn't know how to talk about what that change needed to be, but I did an online test and I found out, okay, I could be mildly depressed. And very quickly, I sort of said, okay, what are the options here? And it just so happened that one of the things that Mary and I were talking about was walking. So for me, the shift was very quick because I was in one state 3 weeks ago that felt like it was a long state that wasn't getting out. And then very quickly this shifted for me. And I'm trying not to be overly optimistic, to be honest with you, because it feels like the shift is so drastic. Like I'm going, really, can this be true? Can this really be, can this simple ritual in the morning really set such a dramatic tone? And I'm not convinced yet, but I can tell you sufficiently that 2 weeks it has set a dramatic tone. Like, so I'm at least I'm embracing it with a level of skepticism. I'm
Mhm.
saying this has changed me in the last 2 weeks, and I think it's changed Mary in the last 2 weeks. Let's keep going and see. Let's see where this goes. Yeah.
Ah, so there's faith in there, right? Skepticism is trying to protect. There's a protective function, right? I guess to not be disappointed, but still in
Yeah.
open mode when you are when you're saying that let's see where this goes.
Let's see where this
So,
goes. Yeah.
so that's really interesting because from a psychological perspective, right? A perspective, right? We can have two perspectives or opposing beliefs at the same time. So I
Yeah.
think that creates that balance. I can be skeptical about this, but I can also be open.
And I want to honor the skepticism, right? You know, so like, so that it feels like, okay, it's okay. You can be skeptical, believe you. You can sit down in the corner for just a bit. We're testing this out. We're testing this out, and we're seeing this go where this is going. And so it's not like, I think that I'm afraid to overly reject that skeptical voice. I think the skepticism has its place, and I'm asking the skepticism to sort of give me some space to experience this joy.
Yeah, and I think skepticism or doubt has a function, right, to clarify
Yeah.
what more do I need. And I think it's good for us to know that even during our difficult times, right, we may not know what the future holds for us, but we can have another emotion to help us endure in a form of resiliency. And I think gratitude helps soften the journey and helps the promotion or the allowance of resiliency, the capacity to endure, and therefore to recreate ourselves and to be greater than our suffering.
Yeah, and I had a cousin who is skeptical, but in a very supportive way, right? He's like, "Oh my goodness, Raymond, are you now going to be like this person who's going to like be a happy camper the whole time, right? Because I'm posting these things that are about gratitude and about finding joy and resilience and meditation and all that stuff." And I say, "Yeah, but I also will allow the space that, so you don't want to just sort of go on this trip where you don't give voice to the moments that are, you don't, because that's the danger of social media, right? You just show one face to the world, and I think what I'm trying to do here is to really use social media to sort of change myself, and hopefully have a community that could feel connected to that desire to change, and at the same time also be willing to also also express obstacles, you know, so that if I have that doubt, isn't there a place for that doubt to be expressed in an authentic space on social media too. So I'm trying not to become to get into the trap of just feeling that the only valid feeling to express to the world is a happy feeling. The only valid front I can put to the world is a happy Raymond front, because that's a danger. That's a dangerous.
It is a danger, right? Fairy tales and how they can become illusions, but even Superman needs solitude and he has kryptonite.
And also when I notice that when I think that only that version can exist, I isolate more, because I don't feel I can show the other version, the more broken, the more vulnerable,
Right.
the authentic version. So I think that's partly what social media also does for us, right? When we only feel we can show one side of ourselves, then a whole part of who we are cannot exist. We don't know how to exist. And there are those people who only exist in my world is falling apart.
Right. But I think there's something to be said about like put on a good face or a happy face, and because vulnerability equals weakness.
So that's a good question, right? So is gratitude a happy face? And I think the answer is no. Gratitude is a state of mind. Gratitude is a stopping long enough to look at what exists already, not to say everything is la di da. It's just in this moment. At every moment, I have the choice to stop and see something beautiful. I have a choice to change that story, even in the midst of a lot of pain, right? I have that choice to look at the flower that dropped. And Brian, this is a thing that, you know, we're friends. So this is a thing that you taught me a long time ago when we were in grad school and we'd be driving to some place and you were like, oh my God, stop and look at the sun, stop and look at the sunset, right? And I'm like, oh, really? Really? We have to stop and look at the sunset? I mean, so it came very naturally to you. It didn't come naturally to me. I was, you know, I wasn't a happy camper. Let's just say that. So these things are practice for me. These things
Yeah.
don't come as naturally. So there is an observation that there is power in the moment where I can, in the midst of not feeling great, if I take a deep breath, I can just look up and I can find something great. Yeah. And I
So,
think meditation is that the very fact that you are breathing could be
mhm.
a grateful experience.
Would you say that deliberate consciousness to practice gratitude is what becomes a belief and is what becomes a new ritual to a coping skill?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing, right? I think people have said practice. You know, there have been longest time where you practice journaling gratitude, and I know you do, Brian. You've been doing it forever. You know, Oprah promotes gratitude journaling. It somehow didn't, some weird reason, it didn't feel the same for me. Like I somehow couldn't even write a gratitude journal. But this experience of telling a story related to that gratitude as you're exercising feels, maybe it's because I'm the storyteller, right? I need wider context. I need to express this gratitude in a storied form. That's been very interesting for me. It allows me to connect to so many things simultaneously as I'm telling that story. So it's not just the listing. So it's what's interesting is the story behind the moment of listing.
Mm.
And sometimes there's no story. Sometimes it's okay, the birds are singing. That's it, right? And that's beautiful. But there's also this aspect of walking around in the circles in this park, and that a circle could be a story. Is very naturally it happened. We didn't plan it, right? So one circle could be one story of gratitude that I think is so interesting. That's naturally come out of this experience for us. So storytelling and circles and the fulfillment of a circle, all that symbolism, actually has a place in human life.
In psychology, it's called the Zeigarnik effect, the need
The
for
Zeigarnik effect.
the
What does that mean?
completion. Mhm.
What does that mean?
The need for completion.
Ah, wow, yeah,
Mhm.
that's beautiful.
Right?
Zeigarnik effect,
The Zeigarnik
need
effect,
for completion.
the
Wow.
need for completion. And the suffering is often when things are not complete. And essentially, we don't really complete, right? Because life goes on. So it's an expansion and evolution. There intuitive closure and then an opportunity for growth again. Because with completion can come stagnation, and
Mm.
then we plateau again.
Mm.
So from
So
a
I think it is really interesting. I mean, that we know that Mandela's, right? Those circle things. There's a lot of, so circles in storytelling, circles in completion of Mandela's, and circle. What are those Brian? The mazes,
okay, yes,
uh, the
labyrinth.
labyrinths, right? So it feels like as we go on the tarmac to go one circle, it feels like we're going through the storytelling process of that one gratitude is actually a process we are going through. So the gratitude is the, the starting point, is we're connecting to other things related to that.
So interesting because I was just going to ask you, because memory changes, but memory can revive. Grief or mourning can revive appreciation from a place of loss as well, right? Two things here we can loss of love, but but when I miss you, I remember you, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that gratitude has the capacity for us to rewrite our stories?
Absolutely, right. I think when you talk about when you so it's really interesting, right? Because I think sometimes our stories can feel like in a loop, circular. We talked about circular, like it feels like it's not complete. We're just going around and round and round, and there is no completion to our stories. I think what we are effectively doing is in a tiny bits of our day, we are rewriting so small things to look at, right? So Mary today talked about the fact that her husband and son were awake with her because they knew now that she has the 7 o'clock ritual. So they're awake and they're all having 7 o'clock was a dead time where everybody was preparing. Now it's the pre-Mary going for walk time, and there was a lot of buzz. And there was something shifting even in that, right? It was the honoring of her going on her walk and the family sort of dynamic. And it's a small thing. We don't even know what it is yet, but it's small. So it's so small that it's shifting something, and we want to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say the loop, right? Because if I remember, you just said that initially there was a loop of misery, and that's
Yep.
a good vibration, right?
Yes.
And so these rituals could be perpetuated, the loop of shame or
Yes.
the loop of gratitude and change.
Judgment, the root of judgment, as we're telling stories about other people, and judgment as we're angry with politics. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So not a mood stabilizer.
No. And we're talking about things that we really cannot have any impact on. And so then we move to things that we are, by virtue of our tiny gratitude, creating impact on. So that shift is huge. One, we are just talking, we have no impact. And the other one is by appreciating, we have tiny bits of impact. And we are, I assume, effectively changing, rewiring that story.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for this conversation. And as we close, right, I'd like to ask, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful that the experience of being grateful can trigger beautiful memories. So today I remembered my cousin who was with my aunt before she passed on. And it was a grateful memory for his capacity to be with all people who are ill before they pass on. And it's his birthday, right? So it's this thing, it's this gratitude that can trigger other beautiful things within your memory that you may have you're just not bringing into consciousness. And so gratitude has this ability to also trigger beautiful memories.
So amazing. In the Jewish culture, Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and then in the next 10 days, right, to Yom Kippur, which is a time of atonement, right, forgiveness, for us to grant forgiveness, to ask for forgiveness. And how sometimes for those of us who've been injured and hurt, it's so hard to repair any rupture. And I like to think that gratitude, the walk of gratitude, right, walking away from our pain from a place of gratitude helps soften that capacity to forgive and to ask for forgiveness, to seek forgiveness and to grant it as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Brian, thank you for asking me these questions. They've been fantastic for me to think about.
Conversations all the time. We might as well record them.
We'll be back.
Thank you.
Bye.